What would be most useful for you today?
I think I really want to get some advice on reading comprehension, because my reading comprehension tends to be the worst scoring section. Yeah.
Sure. So what's your approach to it right now?
So I normally, because it's a 35-minute test, I try to do it in 30 minutes just to practice. Because I find that my problem tends to be I reread a lot. So I'll read the text and then I'll do the questions, but then I find that I'll keep rereading parts of the text to find where the information is. And even when I try to do footnotes, because now it's online, it's a bit harder to match the footnotes to where the exact text is. I find that I keep stumbling. But at the same time, I've tried different approaches. I've tried detailing the amount of notes I write in terms of, so before I used to just write what this paragraph will be about. Now I'll detail like what's the approach in the paragraph. So it'll be a topic sentence and then like example and stuff like that to try and help with the structure. But I find that that takes too much time in the first reading. And I often don't. I find that I still need to keep rereading when I was doing the questions. So yeah, that's a big issue of mine. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a common one. I mean, there are so many details and they're arbitrary details, it seems, in reading comprehension passages that it's very difficult to absorb everything on your initial read. So what I would recommend instead is simply try to walk away with the main idea, the author's opinion, the major viewpoints, but everything else, the details, the supporting examples, don't necessarily try to fully digest them in the moment, but rather note mentally where they are so that you can go back and find them when you need to.
Okay. Yeah, I find that's especially common with law passages, and especially, and also passages that I'm not familiar about, where the content is really foreign. I often tend to like read heaps of times, just to even get the content. Yeah, that's a really big issue of mine right now.
Yeah, sure. And when you talk about note taking, how much note taking do you do?
Um, right now I've tried to like, because I've tried around. Now I just kind of do a couple of words every few lines, just detailing the subject. And like sometimes if I come across an opinion, I'll just underline it rather than try to summarize it. I'll just make a note. I feel like that helps a lot, but sometimes when it comes to long passages or again ones that I'm not familiar with, especially scientific ones where you have to make sense of the flow, I struggle with that a lot in the questions.
Right, I understand. So you've been previously underlining in the passage a little bit. And
Yeah.
then what does your note-taking strategy look like in terms of actually writing things down?
Yeah, so I write down the strategy. So if there's a signal word, say for example or something, I underline that or circle that. But in terms of note taking, I guess I write down the subject of every half. I guess I try to do like every half a paragraph. I'll note the subject. So say if it's like, say if the topic is constitutional law or something and how it's applied, I'll note down the example or like the content of the example so I can come back to it. I find that's been really helpful because it tends to match up more with the questions. Yeah, it's been helping, but sometimes again, like when it gets to content that I'm not familiar with, it just yeah, I still make a lot of mistakes. So I don't know if there's any way to just in when you're not doing the test to read up on some relevant stuff, but I'm not quite sure if that will be helpful or where to find those materials.
Yeah, sure. So I think that you may be trying to write down too much. I would try to just note the major viewpoints, the opinions presented. That's it. It takes time to write things down and it takes time to read them. In terms of alternate sources to become familiar with the material, a couple I could recommend are Scientific American and The Economist.
Okay.
And one thing you could do if you want to get faster at comprehending them is two different tools I'm going to recommend. One is called Spreeder, Spreeder. The other is called Phrase Reader. And what you can do is you can copy paste those articles into these apps, and then it will display the text to you at varying speeds so that you can put yourself on a sort of treadmill to get faster at reading them because it's displaying it or putting it in front of you. And that will also help in terms of the LSAT being digital, comprehending it on a screen. Because so much of what we're used to reading online is relatively lower quality than what we read out in printed matter. And so if you want to get used to reading this dense LSAT material on a screen, as the LSAT is digital now, that would be a good way to go about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that will be of really big help. And also something I struggle with is the new 2-passage structure. I mean, it's harder they always ask what's common that they talk about, but it's like they ask about the really niche details. I try to do like a keyword search, but again, like scanning the 2 passages can be really time consuming. And sometimes I think something's in one, but not the other, but tends to be in both. And I have to go again, do the search again. And often because they often diverge a little bit or diverge completely in opinion, the questions tend to always ask about the opinions, and I find that that's also a really big problem as well. I always get a lot wrong in those passages.
Yeah, those can be a little bit different, sometimes a little bit harder even. And so one exercise you could apply, and this would apply to all of reading compound logical reasoning as well, is as an exercise, summarize for yourself what's the main point of each passage. Paraphrase it, put it in your own words, to test yourself and see whether you truly understand what they were talking about. And then for these dual passages as well, as an exercise, just test yourself. Every single one that you do, they've been appearing for the past 10 plus years, since June 2007. And so you could simply run through all the dual passages specifically as a drill. Not all 30 plus of them, but maybe the ones from 2007 to 2009. And simply run through asking yourself, where are there points of overlap? Where are there points of potential disagreement? And oftentimes, the passages won't be directly at odds with each other. Rather, there will be simply, as you said, a small point of overlap, but for the most part, they're talking about different things. Like one might talk about insects in general, the other talks about honeybees in particular.
Yeah.
And so that's, as you said, niche topics. There's that small area of overlap. And I would just focus to test yourself to see, can you improve on that? I mean, you've got some time till the next LSAT. You could drill this and work on it, but I think it is largely a matter of practice.
Yeah. Do you know where I can find articles like that or previous past articles for practice?
Yeah, sure. So if you want general articles, like I said, publications including The Economist, Scientific American, The Atlantic, Harper's, Arts and Letters Daily. If you want more than that, of course, the best source is truly the actual LSAT prep tests. Most of them are available in books of 10 on Amazon.com for about $20 each, or for some courses will give you access to the PDFs as well. And so you could use those instead. There are also 11 exams on the Khan Academy website. And then LSAT so that's a good source of material. And then you also have the June 2007 LSAT PDF available for free. And then at familiar.lsac.org, there are 3 exams in the digital LSAT format.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a big problem. And also, do we have time just to talk about logical reasoning really quickly?
Sure.
I've been doing logical reasoning a lot, and I find that I've improved a lot. Now I used to, under 35 minutes, I used to get 3 or 4 wrong. Now I get 2 or 3 wrong under 35 minutes, and under 30 minutes, I often get around 4 wrong. So 3 or 4. I find that now it really comes down to concentration, when I'm really able to focus, because as soon as I get distracted, I notice I start getting it wrong. So do you have any, I guess, advice for that?
In terms of just staying interested?
Not really. I don't really like the content, but I guess I've done a lot of logical reasoning. Just really like cramming.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, well, you have to ask yourself, what's the conclusion? Ask yourself, so what?
Yeah.
Why are they saying this? What's the point? Find the conclusion. Start there. You find the conclusion, which is their major claim. Then you find the evidence and ask yourself, to what extent does this evidence support the conclusion? What are they failing to consider? Or what are they not bothering to explicitly state?
I find that like my mistakes always come through in long scientific passages again, where you have to physically make sense of the process, and sometimes the question will ask you, what will happen in this situation. They'll get you to basically run through the process. Those are really time consuming. I try to skip them on first go, but sometimes, always trip me over.
For the tougher ones, I mean, the ones later in the section, skipping them and coming back is a valid strategy. But in terms of staying engaged and attempting them in the end, I would say, again, find the conclusion, avoid the filler as much as you can. There is sometimes filler there. And also keep in mind that the topic ultimately doesn't matter. What matters much more is the method of reasoning. And so if you can look at it structurally to see conclusion, evidence, filler, subconclusion, counter premise, all those different parts and pieces, then you can better evaluate the method of reasoning.
Okay. And just wanted to inquire about do you do future, consistent LSAT tutoring, or have you stopped doing that?
No, I still do it.
Okay. Because I was thinking, I've always been looking for some LSAT help this whole year, because I'm based in Australia. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. But yeah, it's Australian accent. But I'm looking to go to a US law school next year. Well, applying next year, going the year after, hopefully. So I've been working at LSAT all over, but I'm needing a bit of help.
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to help. I'll send over a page with some more details on it. And then if you're still interested, reach out and we can talk more about it.
Okay, great. I'll look it up. So far, where's your most easy point? Is it through your website or Facebook?
Well, you have my email, right? That email is the best way to reach me.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Steve. Those advice is really helpful, because some of them I really needed that piece of information. Yeah.
My pleasure, Frida. Glad to help. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
The resources, so Scientific American, Economist, and the Spreader, Phrase Radar, and everything like that. Because I've always been needing some private practice on those stuff, but I never knew what kind of resource I had access to, basically.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Well, I'll send over the link with the information about my LSAT coaching, and then feel free to reach out over email and we can talk more about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.